Session 1, we will be discussing the Millennium Development Goals framework. We will also be discussing the major trends, challenges and some potential solutions. Goal 2 of the Millennium Development Goals framework is about universal primary education. So, achieving universal primary education by 2015. The indicators that align to this particular goal are net enrollment ratio in primary education, proportion of girls, proportion of pupils starting grade 1 who reach last grade of primary education, literacy rate of 15 to 24-year-olds women and men. The third goal is about gender parity, which is to promote gender equality and empowerment of women. The main indicator for this particular goal is ratio of girls to boys in primary education and secondary as well as tertiary education. If you see the slide on the current indicator trends in South Asia, which basically provides a glimpse of the current status of enrollment, current status of completion, primary school completion, ratio of female to male in primary school enrollment for South Asia. So, the main points that emerge are that the net attendance rate is pretty high. Almost all countries have been able to achieve the net enrollment rate, which is 70% and over. Primary school completion rate is really good except for Afghanistan, which is low, but most of the countries have a good completion rate. Ratio of female to male primary enrollment is also again very good, which shows that there is gender parity, children are attending school. So, this gives an overall picture for the South Asian countries, which show that overall they have been able to meet the MDGs as described by the MDG framework, Millennium Development Goals framework. We soon realized that children are coming to school, but they are not learning. There is a education learning crisis, as we say. There is a learning crisis that is currently going on, where children are coming to school, but not a lot of them are learning. Children are falling behind getting to the learning there at the grade level, but they are also falling behind in terms of achieving what a grade 2 level or grade 3 level child would be able to do. Now they are in grade 5 or grade 6, but they are still not able to do grade 2 and grade 3 level learning. But however, when you see the learning part, it is still lagging behind, and children are really not keeping pace with the learning that they are required to do at their grade level. It is quite an irony that 61% of the population in India has a mobile phone, but whereas only 41.7% of the children in grade 5 are able to read grade 2 level text. So, we have technology, people have been able to access technology very widely, but where is the learning going? There is a big gap between what they are supposed to learn versus what their actual level of competencies are. Children who are hardest hit by this learning crisis are children who are either girls or are the poorest, who have this barrier of learning. So, children who are from the rural areas, girls who are again from the marginalized communities or living in rural areas have been the worst affected, where they are not even able to do basic literacy and numeracy. The next section will discuss about how education policies are translated into practice. This study is from Nand Nagari, where Asar and Pratham had done this study, which basically tries to get at a sense of whether Right to Education Act is translated into practice in an urban slum setting. So, this was a study done in 2011 in a municipal ward in Delhi in an urban slum setting, where the main question was, is this particular area, is this particular neighborhood RTE compliant, Right to Education Act compliant. So, there was an exhaustive survey done in this particular neighborhood for 6 to 10 years old and then for 11 to 14 years old, to understand whether based on the RTE objectives, are these children do they have access to school, are they going to school or not. and it was found that majority of the children were in school. Very few or hardly any, 2.7% were children from the 6 to 10 age group who were out of school. Similarly, only 3.6% of the children in the age group of 11 to 14 were out of school, but majority of the children were in school. So, in terms of being RT compliant, in terms of making sure that children are in school, it was true that there were children who were already in school. It also found out that the main group of children who were enrolled in school were enrolled in either MCD schools, Municipal Corporation of Delhi school, or Delhi government school. There were few children who were there in private schools as well, but the majority of the children either were in the MCD, Municipal Corporation of Delhi schools, and the Delhi government school, which was also again shows that yes, the government's provision of of reaching out to the children who are at the school going age is correct, and that there were lots of children who were going to the government school. So, it was in terms of education, in terms of providing access to education, yes, there has been a major shift and the children are going to school, but in terms of what does the RT say in terms of the quality, that was not really achieved in this particular study, where we found out that the reading levels of children in Hindi and the reading levels of children in English were quite weak. There were very few children who were able to read a standard 2 level textbook, as this particular table shows. So, in terms of being RT compliant, where we see that enrollment has been children have access to schooling, but in terms of children actually achieving or learning that is required in the school is really weak. This table shows that for reading levels in Hindi and for reading levels in English, children who are even in grade 5 are unable to read a grade 2 level textbook, and that goes across all the schools, MCD schools as well as Delhi government school. Half of the children in the Delhi government schools who are in standard 5 are unable to read standard 2 level textbook. Similarly, for English it is even worse. Private schools are doing better, but in general the learning part is still very weak. So, basically we see that enrollment is still in this particular community. We saw that enrollment is good, and access to schooling is good, but the learning levels are still pretty weak. Now, to get to some of the concepts and definitions of the Millennium Development Goals, to understand what it covered and what it didn't cover, I will go over some of these concepts. For example, one of the main criticisms of the Millennium Development Goals is that it focuses on access, but the learning part was still missing. There is also no focus, there is no synergy between different sectors. What the health sector does has no conjunction with what the education sector does. Whereas we really know that MDGs are supposed to be working together, all these different sectors are to be working together. There should be a lot of cross sectoral work going on. For example, for early childhood education, it's really difficult to just focus on education, whereas all the health or the immunization part completely gets left behind. That is really not the model, but the way the MDGs are set up, there is very little cross sectoral synergies. There is also no action oriented focus. MDGs provide you with a status of what these levels are in terms of enrollment and in terms of learning, but it does not provide you with what the countries need to do to improve enrollment. That part is completely missing. There is no data, or there is lack of data to make sure that we attain the MDGs, which becomes a big problem, because not all countries can do surveys regularly, not all countries can do population census regularly. It becomes very difficult to go to every school and get the number of children enrolled in these schools every year, given the capacities of the statistics department, given the capacities, given the funding mechanisms that most countries have. So the lack of data becomes a big challenge in understanding where MDGs are. And there is also a lack of ownership. There is no two departments of the government which say that which join forces and say that yes, we need to work together and this is how we will attain MDGs. In 2012, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon had initiated this Education First campaign, where the main initiative was to bring in different partners, different government entities, government agencies, as well as international community to prioritize the Education First campaign. The main priorities of the Education First campaign are putting every child in school, which the Millennium Development Goals had asked for, which basically provided access to education, access to schooling for each and every child. The second goal is to improve the quality of learning, which the Millennium Development Goals didn't really focus on. It was all about providing access to schools, but the quality of education part was left behind. So with the Education First campaign, UN Secretary General focused on not only access but as well as providing quality of education. And the last priority was fostering global citizenship.
Quality education for all is essential for sustainable development and the fight against poverty and exclusion. That is why I launched the Global Education First initiative in 2012. Our efforts are bearing fruit. Education is regaining its rightful place on the global agenda. Young people have led the way, inspired by the courage of Malala Yousafzai. We stand with them in demanding the rights of the 57 million children denied an education and the millions more who need better schooling. Encouraged by the Global Education First initiative, governments and development partners are working to get every child in school and learning well to equip them for life in the 21st century. There is a new momentum in countries with the greatest needs, such as those affected by conflict, which are home to half of all children lacking education. But we must do more, much more. Educating the poorest and most marginalized children will require bold political leadership and increased financial commitment. Yet aid for education has dropped for the first time in a decade. We must reverse this decline, forge new partnerships, and bring much greater attention to the quality of education. I renew my call to world leaders to join our initiative and put education first. Education is a fundamental right and essential for shaping the future we want.